Just on some other federal politics matters, should Australia follow the United States and try and force TikTok to cut ties with its Chinese parent company or potentially face a ban?
Well, Simon, I think the Prime Minister needs to show leadership here. At a time when we're being advised that young people who are using TikTok are having their personal details collected, their images, the most intimate discussions, when that's being collected either by a country or by a third party, the Prime Minister has to act. And so far, the Prime Minister hasn't done that. And I think the Prime Minister, particularly at a time like this, doesn't need to be weak. He needs to be strong and to show the leadership that's required to keep Australian kids safe online. And if he's got advice from the agencies, which I believe he has, that the information is being hoovered up and young people don't have a safe presence online, it's up to the Prime Minister of our country to respond in the appropriate way, and that's what I would expect him to do. Well, again, obviously we're watching the US debate closely, but if the intelligence agencies here are informing the Prime Minister that young people online, or millions of Australians who might utilise this platform, if their personal information is being compromised, if it's being hoovered up from their individual messages, if their images are being captured, then that's not a safe place for young people to be. And the Prime Minister needs to explain to the Australian public how he's going to address it and how he proposes to keep people safe online.
Some Palestinians had their temporary visas to Australia cancelled. How is it appropriate for this to happen?
I think it's almost without precedent that somebody who's mid-air would have their visa cancelled and be asked to turn around. The circumstances here, I think, are pretty dire. I've said before, I don't think it's a good idea or in our country's best interest for people to be brought out of a war zone into our country when we don't have certainty around travel documents or identity, around affiliation, sympathies. Hamas is a listed terrorist organisation in our country, and I'm sure the vast majority of people who would be applying for a visa just want a better start in life. But we need to make sure that anybody who's coming to our country is not going to pose a threat. We need to make sure that if somebody's travelling here, they're travelling here on legitimate circumstances and conditions, and if they've given an explanation, if they've given information and a visa's been issued on that basis, and that information turns out to be false or misleading, then obviously the decision maker is right to cancel the visa. But the government's rushed here to issue these visas in a circumstance I can't understand how it's in our country's best interests, and it just seems to me that this is another thing that Minister Giles has botched. Releasing of 149 criminals, hardcore criminals, into the community. And we now find that they were released on the wrong visa or on the wrong circumstances. Andrew Giles lurches from one disaster to the next. How Prime Minister Albanese can keep him in his job is beyond me, and Australians have long lost faith in Minister Giles. His responsibility is to keep us safe, and he's not doing that. And I think that's why the Prime Minister needs to act.
So these visas for the Palestinians should never have been issued, in your opinion?
Well, I think it's very difficult for the government to mount an argument. In fact, they haven't even attempted to do so yet, to explain to the Australian public why you would be bringing people out of a war zone when we don't have certainty around the biometrics checks that should have been undertaken, particularly with the United States. We don't know whether people are travelling on paper documents or whether their names have been checked against intelligence databases and holdings from our Five Eyes partners. None of that information has been explained or provided, and I think there are plenty of opportunities, as we've demonstrated in the past, to bring people in who want to start a better life. We're the most generous nation in the world when it comes to our migration program, second on a per capita basis only to Canada. And I think the Prime Minister is rushing it here. On the issue, as we know, since October 7, the Prime Minister has tried to walk both sides of the street, and I think that's why a lot of Australians are angry at the way he's approached what is a very, very difficult issue, and why he would be issuing visas, obviously then cancelling those visas. It shows that there is a problem in the system, and a problem is with the government and the direction that they've given to these decision makers.